He tried his best to prove that Christianity is false. Watch what happened.
Everything depends on whether Jesus returned from the dead or not. I thought I could disprove it, but as I began to investigate the resurrection, I was stunned because I did not expect there to be any historical validity to the fact that Jesus died on a cross and rose from the dead. But I can summarize it really quickly, what I found, using 4 words that begin with the letter E. Execution. Jesus was dead after being crucified. I thought maybe he survived, and the cool, damp air of the tomb resuscitated him. That's what I thought. No. We have no record anywhere of anyone surviving a full Roman crucifixion, anywhere. Not only do we have multiple accounts in the documents of the New Testament that tell us that Jesus was dead after being crucified, we've got 5 ancient sources outside the Bible that talk about him being dead. The second E stands for early reports that he rose from the dead. In other words, reports that didn't come after decades of legendary development, but go right back to the cross itself. We have a report of the resurrection of Jesus, including named eyewitnesses and groups of eyewitnesses that said he died. Why? For our sins. He was buried. On the 3rd day, he rose from the dead. And these eyewitnesses, groups of eyewitnesses and individuals, this report has been dated back by scholars to within months of his death. Within months. Yeah, wow. That's a newsflash.
You can see this.
It's in the Bible. 1 Corinthians 15, starting at verse 2. Third E is empty tomb. And what's interesting about that is even the enemies of Jesus admitted the tomb was empty. How do we know? Because we know from history, sources inside and outside the Bible, that when the disciples began saying, oh, Jesus had been resurrected, what the enemies of Jesus said was, oh, well, the disciples stole his body. Think about that. That's a cover story. They're admitting the tomb is empty. They're just saying this is how it got empty. They stole the body. So they're conceding implicitly that the tomb is empty. You know, if you're a teacher and a student comes up to you and says, the dog ate my homework, he's admitting he doesn't have his homework, but he's trying to explain what happened to it. It's the same thing. And then we look at the 4th E, eyewitnesses. Most of what we accept as being true from the ancient world is based on maybe 1 source or 2 sources of information. When you get right down to it, we know things about famous people through ancient history because maybe 1 source or 2 sources. For the conviction of the disciples that they encountered the resurrected Jesus, we have no fewer than 9 ancient sources inside and outside the New Testament, confirming and corroborating the conviction of the disciples that they encountered the risen Christ. That is an avalanche of historical data.